Have you ever looked at the problems facing the ordinary citizens of Ireland and thought to yourself, you know what would fix this? More TDs. Well, if you have, and I'd wager you're in a tiny minority or a politician in that case, then you're in luck, because the Electoral Commission has decided that we need even more TDs to pay with our taxes, instead of, using that money to maybe buy a bed in the new children's hospital. The electoral boundaries are also being redrawn, and the number of TDs is being increased to 174, up from 160. Yay! More snouts in the trough. So the increase in TDs is down to the Constitution, which sets out that each of our TDs should represent on average 20 to 30,000 people, and that also explains the redrawing of constituency lines to better distribute the TDs across the country. Okay, so I understand all that, and I can even see the logic, but nope, still not buying that we need more TDs. There is not a single issue facing Ireland today that is as a direct result of the lack of manpower in Dáil Éireann. Now, I was going to say a lack of brain power in Dáil Éireann, but, well, you know. Another factor is that this apparent need is due to our population growth, with the Commission citing our population of over 5.1 million in the last census. And while the Constitution does refer to the population, the total number of people resident in Ireland with Irish citizenship is around 4.3 million according to the last census, with citizenship being a requirement to vote in general elections. The new TDs certainly aren't free, so in my view, the population growth that should count is the one that has a vote. Now, perhaps that's reductive thinking, but I just can't see the need for more TDs. Most of the ones we actually have do little of relevance for ordinary people. And as for the ones in actual positions of power, well, if you follow this channel at all, you'll have a fair idea of how I feel they are performing. Spoiler alert, badly. They are performing badly. And more TDs won't change that. What it will change, or at least have an impact on, is the next general election. Coupled with the redrawing of constituency boundaries, there seem to have been a few favourable Homer calls for the sitting coalition. Some big names who struggled the last time out have been gifted more wiggle room in the form of more seats in their constituencies, so more chances of getting re-elected. On the other hand, you have Sinn Féin, the biggest and most tangible threat to the coalition, already knowing they have to run more candidates than last time, but now facing more of a challenge in those new and newly divided constituencies. All just a happy coincidence? Perhaps, but the cynic in me can't help but wonder. So let's talk about some of the winners here. First up is An Taoiseach Leo Varadkar. He took 5 counts before eventually being elected in the 4-seater Dublin West constituency. He now has more breathing room as Dublin West has grown to a 5-seater. Very handy. It could also benefit Roderick O'Gorman, who managed getting by at the 6th count in the same area, although let's be real here, no amount of constituency changes are going to help the Greens at this stage. And to compound the issue for O'Gorman, he hasn't exactly been doing a good job with his brief now, has he? But the change here could well save Leo's skin come the next election. Cork South Central has also grown from a 4-seater to a 5-seater, which will be music to the ears of An Taoiseach Micheál Martin, who got in on the 6th count last time round, and Simon Coveney and Michael McGrath, who both scraped in on the 8th count. Again, very handy. More breathing room for underperforming TDs, and serves to negate the threat from the expectation of Sinn Féin running 2 candidates in as many areas as possible. Meath East has also grown from a 3 to a 4-seater, which means another chance for flailing Justice Minister Helen McEntee to survive after scraping in on the 7th count last time round. Another underperforming minister, this time Minister for Homelessness Darragh O'Brien, has also perhaps been handed a lifeline. Fingal has been split in 2, and while O'Brien managed being second to Sinn Féin's Louise O'Reilly last time out on the 8th count, that was before his shambles of a run as Minister for Housing. Will he now have a slightly easier time of it, given the new Fingal East is home to some of the more affluent areas of Fingal? Only time will tell, but I certainly hope not. Of all the failing departments we have, it seems like he and Health Minister Stephen Donnelly are trying to outdo each other, and are by far the biggest failures right now. O'Brien has done nothing to stem the tide of homelessness, even going so far as to flippantly quip to a large gathering of the press at the launch of a housing charity's annual report, "Have ye no homes to go to?" Now look, I don't like to throw around the word moron too often. If you call everybody a moron, then it kinda loses its impact. But I can say, without hesitation, that Darragh O'Brien was being a real dick with that comment. So I don't know if the splitting of Fingal into two will actually help the man who is the face of the biggest crisis facing this country, one that has serious ramifications for so much of the electorate. But I do know the splitting of Fingal now means Sinn Féin will have to try to field 4 candidates across the 2 new areas, instead of simply finding a running mate for Louise O'Reilly, who handily topped the poll last time out, and that can only be a good thing for the embattled Minister for Homelessness. So they are some of the winners, but what about some of the losers? Well, the boundary changes have certainly raised some eyebrows, haven't they? We have seen Tallaght get split, with Feather Cairn being moved from Dublin South West and added to Dublin Mid West for some reason. I just can't understand splitting up a sizable town like Tallaght, especially when you consider that the albeit smaller Swords in Fingal was not split up, as the Commission specifically stated that they wanted to avoid that. Very strange call there in my view. Will it have an effect on 2 constituencies that tend to lean left anyway? Who knows, but it's still an odd choice. Surely a town boundary is important to maintain. Another boundary change that has raised some eyebrows is the aforementioned breaking up of Fingal into East and West. Now, I've touched on this one already, but looking at the map, it's not so much the division, but the naming of the 2 constituencies that has me scratching my head. Why name them East and West when the coastal towns of Balbriggan, Skerries and Rush are now a part of West Fingal? I mean, they're as east as you can get before hitting Wales. Why settle on those names? Why not Fingal Southeast and maybe Greater Fingal, since it's geographically larger? I just don't get it. It's just one of those things that makes me wonder just how much thought was put into it all. It's like the Commission got lazy here, and if they've gotten lazy here, where else in the review has it happened? It may seem like a small thing, but I can't shake the feeling that it undermines the process. Or maybe I'm just odd and it doesn't actually bother those living in the new West Fingal area, or anyone else for that matter. But anyway, back to the losers. Well, that new Wicklow-Wexford constituency is certainly the biggest head-scratcher, isn't it? The logic seems to be that Wexford, a 5-seater, was too big to remain a 5-seater, but not big enough to be split into 2 3-seaters. At least that's what I think is the rationale. So what they've done instead is split Wexford and Wicklow into 3 areas, with what remains of Wicklow and Wexford losing a seat each and becoming 4-seaters, and the bit in the middle, Wickford, Wexlow, becoming a 3-seater. No one is happy here. All 5 seats taken in Wicklow are in the north of the county, and all 5 seats taken in Wexford are in the southern part of the county, meaning in both cases someone will lose out, unless they move to the new constituency in the middle, as that new constituency has 0 sitting TDs at present. It's all very messy. The biggest losers in this change, though, are not the TDs vying for less seats, but those voters in the new constituency with no representation as of yet. They're going to be forced into voting for candidates that may be new, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but you'd also like some continuity and trust that they are up to the task. Or be forced into voting for a candidate that has been parachuted in to fill the void, with the fear there being that the candidate won't be familiar with the local area enough, or won't really be fully committed to the area the way a local candidate would be. Not exactly what you want as a voter now, is it? Interestingly enough, this change adversely affects 2 prominent members of government in Wicklow, namely Health Minister Stephen Donnelly and Minister for Higher Education, and the man who has designs on leading Fine Gael, Simon Harris. In my view, neither man can stake a claim that they are doing their jobs well. Stephen Donnelly has been atrocious as Health Minister, and that's saying something. And what exactly has Simon Harris done? He has failed as Health Minister already, and now has a newly made-up Ministry of Higher Education. Considering it took both of them 15 counts to be elected, and Sinn Féin perhaps running 2 candidates, it doesn't look great for either of them really, does it? Now, where did I put my violin? Now, obviously, I can't go into every constituency here, so I tried to just hit some of the main talking points and aspects that caught my eye. I tried to cover the more prominent members of the coalition, as ultimately this could well help some TDs we'd like to see the back of manage to cling on to their seats. But I'll link the report in the description below, and a few other links that might be useful for figuring out how your own constituency fared. The cynic in me, though, can't help but wonder at some of the decisions. As I said, it certainly seems like there were some home team decisions made that will benefit Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Sinn Féin will have a lot to do to avoid history repeating itself, and finding enough quality candidates has just become an even greater job. The smaller parties and independents may also find themselves struggling with the increase in 3-seater constituencies, which is not good overall for democracy, as we need more voices and representation than just the big 3 parties. The redrawing of constituency lines can also have adverse effects on a candidate's support base, which, regardless of party affiliation, can be seen as unfair when their local work and understanding of their local communities may have been what got them the votes in the first place. This also affects the voters themselves, as now they have to familiarise themselves with new candidates who they may not feel a kinship with. And then, of course, there is the impact of even more TDs. Other than to cost us more money which Micheál Martin seems to think is an expense we can afford, and to bolster the ranks of the bigger parties, what good are they going to be? For the ordinary people of this country, what use are they? How will more of them help the average Irish citizen? Just more taxpayer money offered up for free-for-all mileage and expenses claims, is it? I genuinely like to hear a good reason for it other than simply it's in the Constitution. In short, it's all a bit messy, isn't it? A cat amongst the pigeons just before what is shaping up to be one of the most significant general elections since the formation of the state. People are crying out for change, but more TDs and redrawing of electoral lines is not the change most want. So what do you think? How did your own constituency fare? Are you happy with the changes? Are you happy with more TDs? Or, like me, do you feel that we have enough already? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified of new content. If you want to support the channel, you can now buy me a coffee, which is greatly appreciated, and a huge thank you to those of you who already have. You can also follow me on Twitter for my real-time ramblings. Until next time, slán go fóill.